Okay, good evening, everybody. Monday night, so it's another Parsha class. This week, the Rebbe writes in a Yom Yom that Parsha Lecha is a very lively, lebedik. It's an exciting Parsha. It speaks about the whole time about Avram Avinu, who was the first Jew, and it's a remarkable Parsha. We know already the Ramban writes, we said this many times, the Ramban writes that any Ma'aseh of a similar Abanim, that whatever happened, the stories of the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, are signs for all future generations, which means every story in Torah is a lesson. It's not a storybook. The Torah is just telling us a story that happened by Avraham Avinu. The Torah is telling us massive lessons in life. And not only are they giving us stories and lessons in life, but the fact that it happened to the Aves, that's what the Ramban means. Ma'aseh Aves similar banim, the fact that it happened to the Aves, any story that happened with Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, are giving us the strength and ability to accomplish these things that they did because they broke through the barrier. Now, at the beginning of last week's Parsha, when the Torah starts speaking about Noach, so the Torah says, Elo told us Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a righteous man. In this week's Parsha, it said, Vayem Hashem al Avram, Hashem said to Avram, Lech Lecha, go, just move on, get out of here, go to the land I'll show you. So the Ramban and a lot of other commentaries ask the question, why doesn't the Torah say something about Avraham Avinu? After all, believe it or not, it's very interesting. At the beginning of the Parsha, of this Parsha, Avraham was 75 years old. That's what the Torah says. It says, Avraham ben Chamesh v'shivim shana. At the beginning of the Parsha, it says clearly in the Chumash itself, Avraham Avinu was 75 at the beginning of the Parsha. Closer to the end of the Parsha, when Hashem made, by Shishi over there, when Hashem made the bris ben Absom, the covenant with Avraham Avinu, the Jews are going to be in Golus, and I'm going to take them out, and they're going to go out with a lot of money. At that time, Avraham Avinu was 70. And the commentaries, the Midrashim talk about it. The beginning of the Parsha, Avraham was 75. At the end of the Parsha, Avraham Avinu was 70. But let's talk about the beginning of our Parsha. Avraham Avinu was 75 years old. Now, until then, Avraham Avinu had a very great life. 3 years old, he recognized the existence of Hashem. In passing, the Rambam brings down that he recognized Hashem at the age of 40. And the Mepharshim explain it's not a contradiction. There are different stages of Avraham Avinu's recognition of Hashem. So he recognized Hashem at the age of 3. He recognized Hashem more at the age of 40. He broke his father Terach's idols, as everybody knows the story. He was thrown into a burning furnace by Nimrod, and he came out miraculously alive. None of that is mentioned in the Chumash. You start talking about Avraham Avinu, just like it started telling us about Noach, that Noach was a righteous man. Why doesn't the Torah tell us Avraham Avinu was a great man? No, Avraham ish tzaddik, and it could say even details that he was thrown into the fire and he was saved and he broke the idols in his father's store and nothing, no mention about Avraham Avinu at all. Hashem said to Avraham and told him the message. So the answer is like this. Torah is not telling us the greatness of Avraham Avinu, because the greatness of Avraham Avinu began when Hashem spoke to him and said, Lech Lecha. Why? Because the greatness of a Jew is not what the Jew does on their own, but the fact that Hashem chose us to do what he wants us to do. In other words, the greatness of Avraham Avinu was not that on his own he recognized God, that on his own he was willing to fight his father with breaking the idols, and he was willing to fight against Nimrod and be thrown into a fire. That's all what the Jew did on his own. Avraham Avinu did on his own. Here, what is Hashem telling us? You know what the greatness of Avraham Avinu was? Hashem made him a Jew. This is the greatness of Hashem. Because the connection between a Jew and Hashem is not something which is logical, something that Avraham Avinu on his own recognized the greatness of Hashem at the age of 3 and 40, like we said, the different stages of his recognizing of Hashem. It is not even the Mesiras Nefesh of logic. Avraham Avinu had Mesiras Nefesh. Instead of bowing, to the idols or whatever, he was thrown into a fire. But that's all what he did on his own. The uniqueness of a Jew, and therefore the Torah is saying like this. The greatness of a Jew is not because he's a great individual. The greatness of a Jew is because Hashem says to every single Jew, do what you have to do. Because if Hashem is making Avraham Avinu a Jew because he's great, so a person will come along and say, you know what, I'm not great. I'm a simple Jew. I'm not great like Avraham Avinu. How do you expect me to have what Avraham Avinu accomplished? So therefore, it's explained like this. Vayem Hashem al Avraham, Hashem is speaking to every single Jew. You don't have to be a great Jew. Hashem shows us, Ubanu b'charta mikol am v'loshen, ata v'chartanu mikol amim. Hashem shows us as his nation. That itself is enough to make the Jew being able to do what Avraham Avinu did, and the mission of every single Jew. And therefore, the shaykhs, the connection between Hashem and the Jew is from above. Lech, Hashem tells the Jew. Now, what is Hashem telling the Jew? What is he telling us? Lech, you need to go. Mi'artzecha, from your land. U'mi'melatzecha, and from your birthplace. U'mi'beis avicha, and from your father's land. Ala aretz asher areka, to the land I will show you. What does that mean? Avraham, the lesson of a Jew is, because again, it's a lesson for us. Artzecha means basically different ways of learning it. One explanation is Artzecha means, Eretz means Rotzain, your will. The Medrash says, why is Eretz Yisrael called Eretz Yisrael? It runs to do what Hashem wants us to do. The land is holy. Hashem tells to every single Jew, you might have a will to do something. And it might even be a good will. Not that, God forbid, a negative of it, but you have a will, or things that you were accustomed to do. Hashem says, Lech Lecha, you need to go above and beyond. What is Melatecha? Melatecha means your birthplace, meaning those things that you're accustomed to from your birthplace, your society, the things that you, even good things. We're not talking about, God forbid, negativity, but it's something that is your nature. It's something your society caused you to do it. Mi beis avicha also means from your father's house, what you grew up in. Or in a deeper sense, these three things means. Artzecha means your will. Melatecha means your midas, your natural habits, your natural feelings, emotions. Beis avicha av is a level of chokhmah, from your intellect. The Torah says, and this is the first pasuk to a Jew. This is the first commandment Hashem is giving Avraham Avinu. Okay, in the order of the Chumash. Hashem is telling every Jew, let me tell you what your mission statement is for life. The first thing you need to do is Lech Lecha, move. Never stay on the same place. Never be status quo. You have to be a mahalech. Like we learned in the past, the pasuk says, "V'nasati lecha mahalchim." Hashem says about neshamis, I will make you goers amongst the standers. The aimdim, the ones that stand, refers to the malachim. Even though the malachim also become elevated, but it's a gradual ascent. Hashem tells a Jew, Lech lecha, me'artzcha, me'latcha, me'sadicha, you need to get out of what your desires are, what your natural midas, your natural instinctive emotions are all about, and from your intellect. And where do you need to go? To the land I will show you. And the Mefarshim asked, why didn't Hashem tell him where? He was going to Eretz Yisrael. Why didn't Hashem tell him that I'll tell you? Why didn't he tell him? So simply the Medrash says Hashem wanted to give him more reward. Hashem says, go, he's going, he doesn't even know where. So Hashem gave him, it's more reward. But here it's a deeper meaning for a lesson for us. Elo aretz asher areka means Hashem says, I want you to go to the will, asher areka, where I will show you my godliness. When a Jew breaks their nature, whether it's the nature of their emotions or their thought, speech, and action, or their intellect, it doesn't matter, or their own desires. They might even be holy desires. The first mission statement to a Jew, Hashem is telling the first Jew right away at the beginning, Lech Lecha. You have to move on. You have to break your nature. You learn 10 minutes a day, learn 11 minutes a day. You have this type of feeling to something, break it and create a greater feeling. This is the lesson of the Jew, which doesn't only mean I'll show you. Areka means I will reveal myself to you. And Rashi says on the word Lech Lecha, what's the double expression Lech Lecha? He said, this is for your benefit. Lech Lecha, meaning this is for your own benefit. Okay? What does it mean for your own benefit? This is the benefit of the neshama. Hashem says, you want to reach a higher level, you want to become a greater person, you want to become connected to Hashem completely, you need to have this attitude of going better and better and upper and upper and upper, up. This is the first lesson of the Jew. But then the Torah continues with another interesting point. The Torah says, Lech Lecha, and right away, a few psukim later, it said, Vayirav ba'aretz, and Avram went down to Egypt because there was a hunger. So even the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, what happened over here? It was another test of Avram Avinu. Hashem says, I'm going to make you rich. I'm going to make you great. I'm going to make you a great nation. You're going to be blessed, and everybody's going to be blessing you, and they'll use you as a blessing. And all of a sudden, and Avram already has to go down to Egypt. What is this in the deeper sense for us? And also by Avram Avinu. The pasuk Vayered Avram Mitzrayma, Avram went down to Egypt. Yurida, a descent. But it's in the Parsha called Lech Lecha. It's in the Parsha of going up. El Oretz Asher Hareka. How do you have a Yurida, a descent, in a Parsha that's ascent? Here there's a very, very deep, famous Sikha from the Rebbe. The Rebbe explains, the Rebbe asks this question: how could Vayered be in a Parsha Lech Lecha? It's a contradiction. So the Rebbe explains a phenomenal concept, and this is very important in life. In order to go up, you need to go down. You have that in everything. We mentioned this many times. You want to make money in business, you have to invest money. Invest money means you are losing money. The purpose of losing money is to make money. But in order to make money, you have to lose money. If you want to pick something up, you have to bend down to pick it up. If you want to take a jump forward, you have to take a step back and then you could jump forward. So normally, the way it's understood and perceived, that yeah, it's a descent, but the descent's purpose is in order to build, to go up. The Rebbe explains it much deeper. The descent itself is part of the elevation. The descent itself, the going down, that itself is the elevation. Where do you see this in halacha? In halacha, it's a very clear din in Hilchos Shabbos. In Hilchos Shabbos, one of the lamites malachas is boina construction, and one of the lamites malachas is seiser, destroying a building. So now we know when it comes to Shabbos, you're only obligated biblically for constructive things, not for destructive things. We're not learning Hilchos Shabbos, like even 30 examples of that. In halacha, you're only desecrating Shabbos biblically when you do something constructive. If you do something destructive, it's only rabbinically forbidden. So how could there be a malacha of biblical prohibition of saisai, which means destroying a building, if that's destructive? So the Gemara says, you're right. Saisai almanas livnes. When are you obligated biblically for destroying a building on Shabbos? If you're destroying it for the sake of building. If you're destroying it for the sake of building, so then it's really constructive. It's not destructive. Go to we mentioned this many times. Go to a construction site and you'll see they're knocking down a building. There's an old house and they're knocking it down. They're going to put up a new house. So you come to the workers and what are you guys doing? So if they're intelligent, they would say we're building a building. They're destroying a building. But they're not destroying a building for destroying the building. It's a means to the end. They're destroying in order to build a bigger building. So therefore, the destruction itself is actually constructive. And therefore, the Rebbe explains, and this is easier said than done, like we always say. In life, the goal of a Jew is to always go up. Physically, spiritually, it's always to move up. That's the nature of a human being, to go up. Sometimes we have challenges. We have falling down, fallouts. We fall down. What the Parsha is teaching us, that the fallouts of life are not descents. They're going up. They're elevations. The challenges are not there to destroy. It's not there to mess up. It's the destruction, the challenge itself is the springboard to the jumping. And therefore, Vayeded Avram Mitzrayim, what happened when he went down to Mitzrayim? He became super wealthy. He became super wealthy. So the Yerida is not the descent. It's not a descent. Even the descent is really building. But in order to build higher, you need sometimes to take a step back. And that's what the Torah is teaching us in life. The Torah is teaching us in life that Lech, Lecha, a Jew needs to go. They constantly need to move up. To Hashem's land, we need to go up. But sometimes the Torah says you're going to have Vayeded Avram. You're going to have a descent. But don't worry. That's an elevation. Like we saw by Avram Avinu. The only way he was able to get all that wealth was by going down to Egypt. What?
I understand that he got permission to go to Lecha, which is Canaan, but did he get permission to go to Mitzrayim?
Yeah. If not, he wouldn't have gone.
He didn't do that on his own. He didn't do that on his own.
He didn't. Avraham Avinu doesn't do anything on his own.
Okay.
So Avraham Avinu is telling us that even in the Yerida, even in the descent, is really a Lech Lecha. It's also part of the elevation within itself. Okay, next. There's a very famous question that needs to really be understood. If Avraham Avinu would be living today and you take the pasuk literal, Avraham Avinu would be thrown into jail and he would be an outcast and everybody would look down at him, especially the women. Avraham Avinu is coming close to Mitzrayim. Listen to this. Okay? Avraham Avinu says to his wife, listen, I know you're a very beautiful woman. Okay? So what's going to be? When the Egyptian will see you and they'll tell you, they'll know you're my wife, they're going to kill me and you're going to stay alive. Okay? Therefore, I beg you, please say you're my sister, that they can do whatever they want to you, that I should become good because of it. Listen to a husband. Can you imagine? A husband says to his wife, I don't care if they do whatever they want to you, because probably there are low lights, right? But if you're a married woman, they're not going to touch you. Okay? So please do me a favor. I need to get rich. I need to become famous. I need greatness. So do me a favor. Say you're my wife. Say you're my sister. They'll do to you whatever they want to do. But I'm going to have it good. How can Avraham Avinu do that? What type of husband? If that's done today, you know what would happen. It'll be all over Facebook. What's going on here? Or Twitter, maybe. All over show, maybe not. How can Avraham Avinu do this to his wife? What type of menstrual criteria? So the Zohar says, and the Mepharshim say this also, Avraham was so certain on Sarah's greatness, he knew nothing is going to happen to her. He knew nothing is going to happen. So therefore, he didn't have a problem saying, Imrinu Achayfiyah. But still, okay, that's fine. He knew nothing's going to happen to Sarah. She'll be good. She'll be safe. But what type of expression is this? That I should get better because of what's going to happen to you. I mean, how does a guy say that? He could say, okay, say you're my sister. I know nothing's going to happen to you. Okay, at least they won't kill me. But what type of thing is this? Avraham Avinu says to his wife openly, that I should have it good because of you and my soul will live because of you. Like, what type of mental type is it? And what's he saying over here? So to preface this, to understand this, we need to understand another premise. The Aves, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Tzaddikim, they are, as the Medrash says about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Ha'aves, Hein, Merkava. The Aves with a chariot of Hashem. The chariot goes nowhere on its own. The driver leads the chariot, which means the horse is completely bottled to the rider. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we have no concept of and comprehension of what that means. But Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, 24/7 for 175 years that Avraham Avinu lived, and Yitzchak's 180 and Yaakov's 147. They had no existence and entity of their own. What Hashem wanted, they did. Now, there was no ego, there was no me. Well, so what's going on over here? So let's take it first simply and explain it then deeper. Simply what happens over here, Hashem, Avraham Avinu says, 1 minute. Hashem just promised me, Ve'escha l'goy gadol, I'm going to make you a great nation. Varvarcha, and Rashi says, with money and fame, okay? Varvarecha b'mamin, and you're going to have an abundance of brachas. Avraham Avinu said, is this what Hashem promised me? This is what has to happen. This is my mission. Hashem says, you're going to have a lot of money. That's what Hashem wants me. Then I'm going to do it. So coming down to Mitzrayim, Avraham Avinu, this is what some Mephoshim answer. Avraham Avinu saw, here's an opportunity to get Hashem's bracha fulfilled. He knew nothing is going to happen to Sarah because she's super holy. She's also Merkava, completely bottled to Hashem. Hashem's not going to let anything like that happen to her. But he says, L'man yitav li b'avurech, Avraham Avinu is saying, this is what Hashem wants. It doesn't sound too good. But you know what? Tough luck. This is what Hashem wants. This other Mephoshim answers simply how Avraham Avinu did what he did. He knew that nothing's going to happen to Sarah. Hashem told him, you're going to have a lot of money. He said, this is right away a chance that Hashem's putting me in a situation. Why is Hashem putting me in this situation? Obviously, because I can make something out of it. So therefore, I'm l'man yitav li b'avurech. Well, let's take it now a little bit deeper. Okay, the Zohar says, Avram and Sarah represents the neshama and the body. Avram Avinu is the neshama, and Sarah Imenu, the Zohar says, represents the body. Remember we said before, everything in Torah is a lesson for us. Okay? Yeah, there was a guy called Sarah, and there's a woman called, a guy called Avram and a woman called Sarah, yeah, granted. But in a spiritual level, Avram represents the neshama, and Sarah represents the guf. Avram coming down to Mitzrayim is representing the neshama coming down into the guf. Mitzrayim, limitations, corruption, evil, body, Yetzer Hara, nefesh habamis, animal soul. Going down to Mitzrayim is a neshama coming into the body. And that's why, by the way, as soon as Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, what is the mission of Lech me'aretcha me'latcha be'savicha? Hashem said, Vayered Avraham Mitzrayim. You know how that's accomplished? Lech lecha. How do you go? How do you get to that level? Hashem said, because it's only through the neshama coming down into the body. There is no elevation in Gan Eden. Yeah, the neshamas go up, but they don't do mitzvahs. There's no connection to the essence of Hashem. In Gan Eden, as the Gemara says, they're sitting basking in the ray of the Shekhinah. They go to a higher level. In Gan Eden, they get a greater ray of the Shekhinah, but it's all a ray. It's not the essence. When a Jew in a neshama in a body does a mitzvah, then the neshama becomes connected to the essence of Hashem versus sitting in Gan Eden. Vayered Avram Mitzrayim represents the neshama coming into the body. And he says to his wife, Imrli achesiyat. And here's a very interesting thing. I don't want to elaborate too much on it. The relationship between a Jew and Hashem, if you look in Shir HaShirim of the great Shlomo HaMelech, which is the love story between Hashem and the Jewish people, the Jews are called Achesi, Basi Lagani Achesiot, Achesi Kala, right? The famous Basi Lagani Achesi Kala, the Jews are called a sister. The Jews are called Altita Shteira Simecha. 1 second. They're called Imecha. Aim. The Jews are called Imay. They're called Biti. The Jews are the daughters of Hashem. These are all psukim and Shir HaShirim. They are called Ishti. The Jews are called Hashem's wife. They are called Hashem's sister. They are called Hashem's mother. mother, and they're called daughter. Why did you just call so many names? Because each one of these people has a different love relationship with in other words, there's a certain unique relationship of love that a daughter has to a father. There's a certain relationship a son has to a mother. There is a relationship that you have with a sister, and there's a relationship that you have with your wife. There are 4 distinct relationships that are not the same. Everybody knows it's not the same. Each one has a uniqueness that the other one doesn't have. What is the difference? Meaning, Imi means then I'm the mother, I'm the receiver. If it's Biti, my daughter, then I'm the giver. If it's Achesi, it's an equal. But it's different than Ishti. Avram Mitzrayma, Avram Avinu is going down to Egypt. The Neshama is coming into the body. So the Avram Avinu says like this: now you're coming into the body, Achesiyat, you're my equal, because the Neshama and the body together do mitzvahs. Neshama cannot do mitzvahs without a body cannot do mitzvahs without a Neshama. Now the Neshama is coming into the body, you say, Imru li Achesiyat. Why? Because only through the body can the neshama be, like we just said, only through the physical mitzvahs in the body can we reach a level of kedusha that you can never reach in any other way. And therefore, this whole story of Avram Avinu going down to Mitzrayim after Lech Lecha, let's look at it from this perspective. Hashem says to the mission statement of every single Jew. The mission of every single Jew is Lech Lecha. You should go out of your thought, speech, and action, out of your midas, out of your will, out of your intellect, to go to godliness. How? So the Torah right away said, the neshama has to come into the body. The neshama comes into the body, then we're equal. Because then the neshama gets an advantage because of the body. And as we said, I will get better because of you, the body, Sarah, because the neshama becomes elevated only through the body. It's a remarkable concept when you take it a little bit deeper, that this is a mission statement to every single Jew. And therefore, this is the first thing that's happened to Avraham Avinu. And therefore, what happened? He became very wealthy. Meaning, the neshama attains a spiritual wealth that it couldn't get if it didn't go down to Mitzrayim. Let's continue with another interesting question that the Parsha asks here. Goyim are not allowed to kill, and Goyim are not allowed to commit adultery. When Sheva Mitzvah's Benenach, right? Idolatry, adultery, murder, the famous 7. Stop to think for a minute what was going on over here. Avraham Avinu is coming down, and he says to Sarah like this: don't say you're my wife, because if you do, they'll kill me, because they want to be with you. Say you're my sister, but then they won't kill me, but then you'll be committing adultery as a married woman. Why is one better than the next? Why would the Egyptians kill him rather than commit adultery? Killing is forbidden for a guy, and committing adultery is forbidden for a guy. Avraham Avinu says to them, you know what they're going to do? They would rather not kill me and commit adultery. But killing is forbidden, adultery is forbidden. What is going on over here? So it's a remarkable thing. There's a halachic issue, and it's a very interesting. We learned it a while ago in the past. There's a question in halacha: what's better, quality or quantity? What's better, quality or quantity? Many times throughout Gemara, we say quality is better. Many times we find quantity is better. You have a lot of something, even though it's not. In other words, I'll give you to the example that Rabbi uses in Tanya, then I'll tell it in human nature of dress. You have a lot of little clouds, and you have one big cloud. Many little clouds, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, could darken the sun as much as the big cloud and even more. You know, when people want to get dressed when they're going into the cold, so it's better to wear many layers of thinner clothing than one just big coat. You stay warmer with many. The big coat is big, but that's quality. And this is quantity, and quantity outweighs quality. There's a lot of proofs to it. I don't want to I could talk for another hour on this topic. Halachically, all the manifestations, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Hilchos Shabbos. Okay. I'll give you another example which will explain this. In fact, the Daskim Baltesis connects the two. And that is as follows. Somebody who's Pikuach Nefesh, somebody who's deathly ill, you have to desecrate Shabbos. You have to desecrate Shabbos. It's self-understood. It's no mitzvah just to keep desecrating Shabbos. You have a mitzvah to desecrate Shabbos to save the person's life. Okay? So there's a question in the Gemara in Halacha. A very sick person who's dying needs meat. And you have two options on Shabbos. You can either shecht an animal. Let's say he needs 10 ounces of meat. Okay, that's what he needs, 10 ounces of meat. You can either shecht the animal, and then all 10 ounces are kosher, but you desecrated Shabbos. Or you cannot shecht an animal, give him treifa meat, 10 ounces, so then it's not the hard sin, the severe sin of desecrating Shabbos, but he's going to have 10 sins of eating treif, because every ounce you eat is another sin. Okay? So you have two options. Either doing a very big sin, desecration of Shabbos, but then it's one big sin, but then there's no little sins. Or should we just do the little sins, 10 of them, rather than one big sin? What's the lesser of the evils? So in Shulchan Aruch it says, you shecht the animal. Because a lot of little sins is worse than one big sin. That's what it says in Allah. Let's come back to Avraham Avinu. There is two options the Goyim would have. Either kill him, do one big sin, but then once he's dead, Sarah is permissible forever. Or not to kill him, to do a lesser sin called adultery. It's not as, it's bad, but it's not as bad as murder. So, or do adultery, and then, but they're going to get a lot of little sins. So the Torah is teaching us, Avraham Avinu said, they would rather kill me rather than, they would rather, if they're going to kill me, because that's one big sin, but then they won't be doing a lot of little sins. So even the Egyptians understood that killing Avraham Avinu, one big sin would be worse than a lot of little sins of living with a married woman. Yeah. And therefore he said, I don't want to get killed. Say you're my sister, and then they'll commit a lot of adultery, but at least they won't get a big sin. This is stam from halacha aspect of that. Okay, next. Okay. Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, another lesson from the beginning of the Parsha, and then we'll move on to other things in the Parsha. Okay. Hashem says, Lech, Lecha, go. Conquer the land. I want you to go because Lech kum isalech ba'aretz, the pasuk says, by Avram Avinu, walking around Eretz Yisrael, that's what Hashem told him to do. Kum Lech ba'aretz, Hashem told him later on, I want you to walk through all around the land of Eretz Yisrael because this is the land I'm giving you. So actually, Avram Avinu made an acquisition of Eretz Yisrael. In those days, the Jews only conquered 7 nations. It says in the Chumash, the 7 nations. The Jews in the time of Avram Avinu, and when the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael with Yeshua, the Jews only conquered 7 nations of Canaan. Later on in Chumash, the pasuk says, "Ki yarchev Hashem es gvulcha," when Hashem will broaden the boundaries, and He gives them additional 3 nations of Cani, Kenizi, and Kadmoni. These are 3 additional nations. The Rambam writes about Ori Miklot. The pasuk says, really, when you get more land, then you're going to have another 3 cities of refuge. So the Jews, when they conquered Eretz Yisrael, were only able to conquer 7 nations. When Mashiach comes, they're going to conquer additional 3 nations, Cani, Kenizi, and Kadmoni. Now, why? What's the difference that until Mashiach comes, they're conquering 7 nations? When Mashiach comes, they're going to conquer Cani, Kenizi, and Kadmoni. So the explanation is as follows. In Kabbalah and Chassidus, it says the following. We know, like it says, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about it a lot, it's all over Chassidus. There are 10 attributes. There's intellectual Chochmah Bina Das, and then there's 7 emotional levels. And then there's thought, speech, and action. The 7 nations of Eretz Yisrael represent the 7 evil, foreign, emotional levels. In other words, in Kedusha you have Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Yesod, Malchus, which is love and fear and mercy and power and, the 7 midas. Those are the 7 midas that the 7 nations of Canaan, that they conquered. Until Mashiach comes, the Jews only have the ability to conquer 7 nations, only the midas. The intellectual level of evil cannot be completely conquered until Mashiach comes. The 7 nations of Canaan, that they were able to conquer. Meaning, controlling the 7 emotional levels of evil, that they're able to do, that they're able to accomplish. The 3 nations, Cani, Kenizi, and Kadmoni, that they didn't have the ability yet to do. When will that happen? When Mashiach comes. Why will that happen when Mashiach comes? Because then the Jews will be on such a higher spiritual level that they will be able to conquer all the, not only the emotional levels of evil, but even the intellectual levels of evil. So therefore, the Rebbe says like this. Hashem told Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha, conquer the 7 nations by walking all around it. He acquired it, it was his, Hashem gave it to him. What's the Aveda now? Now that Mashiach's coming any day. So now the Lech Lecha of the Jew is to go conquer the 3 intellectual levels of evil. And that's why the intellectual levels of understanding godliness that the Rebbe created in Chassidus Chabad was revealed in the relatively recent generations, because before the coming of Mashiach, the intellect of evil has to be conquered. And that's that level that Hashem gave to the Yidden. Only now, not in the time of Mashiach. I mean, now, because we're building the coming time for Mashiach. Okay, there's a few more things I want to mention. In today's Parsha, it says, Avram Avinu built 3 altars. One altar he built, like Rashi says, to thank Hashem for all the miracles that happened to him. Vayiven Sham Mizberach LaHashem, Rashi says, Al Besuras Hazera, and that he'll have children, and Besur of Eretz Yisrael. He built a Mizberach thanking Hashem for the goodness he did to him. He built a second Mizbeach. Rashi says, why did he build the second Mizbeach? That was for forgiveness for the future sins that the Jews are going to be doing. Okay? He built Vayiven Sham Mizbeach LaHashem. It says, why did he build the Mizbeach? Because of the future generations of that the Jews are going to be sinning. There was also another Mizbeach that Avraham Avinu built. And that Mizbeach, that Mizbeach, the Torah doesn't say a reason why. Okay, so there are 3 altars. One he built to thank Hashem. One he built as forgiveness for his children. And one is reasonless. He didn't say a reason for it. What does this mean in serving Hashem? If the Torah tells us Avraham Avinu built 3 altars, one for thanks, one for forgiveness, and one reasonless, that's a lesson for us. What's the lesson? The lesson is like this. There are 3 ways a Jew serves Hashem in a practical level. Torah and mitzvahs, which is basically the concept of thanking Hashem for our existence, right? To connect to him, to thank him. There's a second avodah that a Jew does, is tshuva. Tshuva. You sin, God forbid, we're human, we sin, we do tshuva. That's the second Mizbeach that Avraham Avinu built. So Torah, again, in this week's Parsha telling us, a Jew has to do Torah mitzvahs. A Jew has to do tshuva. And then there's a third Mizbeach, which is reasonless. No reason. What does that represent? Mesiras Nefesh. Sanctifying Hashem's name, like it says in Sfarim. There's no reason given for Mesiras Nefesh. There's no reason for Mesiras Nefesh. What is the Avodah of the Jew? What is the Avodah of the Jew in serving Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh? What is it? Like we said many times, the previous Rebbe used the expression, what is Mesiras Nefesh? Azoi unit anders. This is the way it's going to be and not any different. There's no reason, there's no logic, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to make sense. It can't make sense because there is no sense to it. A Jew needs to serve Hashem in 3 ways. Torah mitzvahs, like the first Mizbeach, thanking Hashem. The second Mizbeach was forgiveness to the Jewish people for their sins. That's the Avodah of Tshuva, which is a very big Avodah of Tshuva, because it's not only for sins, even tzaddikim are going to do Tshuva when Mashiach comes, the Zohar says. Like we learned, the Zohar says, Mashiach is going to get La'asava Tzadikayi B'tuyufta, Mashiach is going to get tzaddikim to do Tshuva. Because what does Tshuva mean? Not sins, Tshuva means to return. As great as you are, you have to become greater. But there's a third level of Yiddishkeit. A Jew serves Hashem because this is the way it's going to be. There's no reason, there's no logic, there's no sin, there's no mitzvah, there's nothing. What Hashem wants is what I do. Giving myself up to Hashem completely, unconditionally. Not logically, not even shuvali. What if that's the incorrect word? But anyway, you got the point. But the concept of the third Mizbeach, there is no reason why Avraham Avinu built the third Mizbeach, because this is the concept of Mesiras Nefesh. A Jew needs to bind himself. And again, we said, what does Mesiras Nefesh mean? It doesn't mean giving up your life. That's Mesiras Haguf, Mesiras Hachayis. Nefesh means will. A nafshi v'tiksa nefesh ha'om b'derech. A nafshi ba'om hazeh. It means I don't have a will to these people. Nefesh means will. What is Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh of a Jew means giving my will up to Hashem, meaning I have no will. Azei unitandish. Hashem wants it, that's the way it's going to be. And that's another fundamental thing in the Parsha of the first Jew. But there's a thing at the end of the Parsha which is also a very important lesson for us. I mean, I'm skipping the 4 and 5 kings. There's Medrashim, there's wonderful things. It's a very beautiful Parsha. But let's get to some life lessons, so to speak. Okay. Sarah, whatever you want, didn't have children. Sarah says to him, okay, go marry Hagar. Hagar got pregnant. Okay, had a son, Yishmael. Avram was 86 at the time. Hashem says to him, your name's not Avram anymore. It's going to be Avraham. I'm going to give you a son. Okay? I'm going to give you a son. Yeah. Hashem said, I'm going to bless her, and she's going to have a son. Avram fell on his face, and he laughed. So what did Hashem say? What did Avram Avinu say to Hashem? Lu Yishmael Yichel Fanech. Yishmael is here. I have a son. Why do you need a son Yitzchak? That's what Avram Avinu said to Hashem. Hashem said to him, no. Sarah Ishtecha, she's going to have and you're going to call his name Yitzchak, and I'm going to have a covenant with him. Avram Avinu, for a minute, thought Yishmael is good enough. Hashem says, no, Yitzchak you need. What's the difference between Yishmael and Yitzchak? What happened biologically here in the Parsha? Well, not biologically, what happened? Yishmael had a bris when he was 13 years old. Going to the Cheshbon. Avram says he was 13 years old. At the time, he had a bris. Okay? The Yishmael B'nai all the way at the end of the Parsha. Ben Shleish Esei Shana B'Mela is Sarah Lassi. When did Yishmael have a bris? At the age of 13. By the way, that's why the Arabs do a bris at 13. Because that's what Yishmael did. What does 13 represent? The age of 13 represents bar mitzvah, maturity, logic. Logic. Yitzchak was the first person to have a bris 8 days old. What does 8 days old mean? No intellect, no understanding, and it's not the number 7. 7 represents the 7 days of the week. 7 represents time. 8, the Klayaka elaborates at the beginning of Parsha Shmini. 8 represents the supernatural. Conceptually, Yishmael represents the intellectual relationship with Hashem, which Avraham Avinu said, Lu Yishmael Yichel Fanecha. What's wrong with that? Hashem said, no, that's not what Yiddishkeit is all about. I don't want an intellectual connection between the Jews and me. Hashem says, you know who it's going to be? Yitzchak. Why? Because a bris at 8 days old means the bond that the Jew has with Hashem is nothing to do with intellect, is nothing to do with emotions. Emotions are 7. This is 8. It's the ultimate bond and connection with Hashem that has nothing to do with seichel, no rationale involved. And this was the discussion at the end of the Parsha. Avraham Avinu maintained to Hashem an intellectual connection with Hashem is good. Intellectual bris is fine. Hashem says no. And trust me, the Rebbe elaborates in the Sikh, the Rebbe explains, Yishmael was Avraham Avinu's son. If there's anybody that knew how to educate a child, it was Avraham Avinu, par excellence. There's no question that Avraham Avinu educated Yishmael the way a Jewish, you never did of a Jew, but the way a kid should be raised. Especially Hagar was a tzaddikus. So you can imagine that Avraham Avinu is educating Yishmael on the best form of education possible. But it was only intellectual. 13. And that's why the Torah emphasizes Yishmael was circumcised at 13. To teach us Yishmael's bond, that aspect of bond and connection is only an intellectual bond. Hashem says no. Okay? And he says Yishmael will multiply, Yishmael will have 12 kids and the whole thing. Intellectual bond is good, very good. But that's secondary to the essential bond between the Jew and Hashem. So these are just some of the many, many, many lessons that could be derived from the Parsha. I just try to pick up ones that are connected to day-to-day living. So, Mitzvah Shem, Wednesday night is the Halach and Tanya at 8 o'clock. Don't forget this Saturday night you change your clocks 1 hour back. And therefore, the class next week will only be at 8. But anyway, that's it for tonight. We'll see you. Hopefully, we'll see you on Wednesday. Everybody have a great rest of the week and everything good.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.